My dad was career Navy. He enlisted at 17 years of age during the Second World War, struggled a little bit with being stateside. They didn't send him out of the country until he was 18, actually. He did some other elements. He was in the South Pacific Theater all of his time in the Navy. The most memorable was the time that he was in transport on the USS Indianapolis. What is so memorable about that is, of course, that most people are aware of the Indianapolis being sunk and the myriad stories, the rich history that involves that particular instance. But he was very fortunate in that when the Indianapolis delivered the fissionable material and the detonator to a little island known as Tinian, my dad was one of the very few Navy personnel with a Marine Guard that were dropped off at Tinian. And then several days later, when the Indianapolis sailed once again, they were hit by a Japanese sub. And then we know the rest of that tragedy and that history. He was part of a group of engineering corps and a group of electronics type people that were thought to be used and necessary. He did not have any further involvement after they were dropped off at Tinian. Mm-hmm. They thought they may need them, but they didn't. Mm-hmm. And things escalated very quickly after the fact. And then, of course, that precipitated the first bomb, which literally changed the course of history.
Absolutely. Where was your dad on Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, 1941?
It's interesting you asked that. He was at church being involved in a Christmas play as a young man. And when they left practice for the Christmas play, the neighbors, have you heard? The Japanese have attacked Pearl Harbor. And if I'm not mistaken, that attack was early in the morning.
Where was he living at the time?
He was living in Indianapolis.
Okay. And so it was probably around noon or something like that?
It would have been 11 or noon Indianapolis time.
Okay.
Yes.
What was his reaction?
It was a world away, and at that point in time, he hardly knew very much about Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. And as you could imagine, he didn't even enlist until sometime after that event took place. Yeah. And he was actually towards the end of the First World War. Mm-hmm. But regardless, Pearl Harbor was a world away. And I would say probably in 1941 that most Americans had no concept of exactly where it was or what it was, but they became aware very quickly. When the war ended, he was in the South Pacific. I'm not sure if he was actually on Eniwetok, but he was in a Pacific island. And when the war ended, he thought, this is great, I'm going home. And it was nearly a year before he actually returned stateside.
What was his rank?
He was a radar man, and other than that, that's what he always said. He was like a lot of people of his era and his generation. He didn't talk about it much.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that when I requested some of the information, there's a group, his service campaign ribbons were lost, and those can actually be replaced, as I understand. Mm-hmm. So I've requested those or finding out about those, and I received a report, and much of that report is redacted to this day. It's still classified simply because no one's ever requested it to be unclassified due to the nature of the Indianapolis being a very secret mission.
Now, how many of the reunions did you think he went to?
We'll say he probably went to at least 6 of those.
And what was the reaction of his fellow shipmates who actually survived by, being in the water?
They were a group that were so thankful. They were very appreciative. Never once did they say, oh, that was the mistake of my life. That was their actual identity, that this is who I am. Had I perished, that would have been fine. But I'm glad I made it so that I could perpetuate this story, and I can share at least the story of the rescue They didn't focus on those that lost their lives to the sharks, to a number of incidents, but they focused on the rescue and time to move forward, which I always thought, wow, that is a really great testament for a younger generation to say, let's pick up the pieces, let's be the phoenix that rises from the fire, and let's move forward to what this means towards a better tomorrow.
That's why they're called the greatest generation. Right?
That's exactly right.
So let me ask you a Hollywood story.
Absolutely.
Have you seen the movie Jaws?
Yes.
And the 5-minute segment where they describe the sinking. Did your dad see it?
He did not see it. I somehow believe he chose not to dwell on that aspect of the Indianapolis, that while that was tragic and that there was the camaraderie of individuals on the ship, that he didn't like the commercialization. That was his perspective. But nevertheless, that particular portion of the movie, as well as other movies, they very actively portray, and accurately to a large degree, portray what some of those men experienced. He didn't really care to dwell on that a whole lot. Sure.
What about the court-martial of the captain? Did he ever have an opinion on that?
He really did. He felt that it was long overdue, and I'm not sure, I believe it may have been a nephew of Captain McVeigh who pursued that through Congress. His strongest comment was that the Japanese commander of the submarine commented that there was nothing else that Commander McVeigh could have done. The submarine had them in their sights. It wouldn't matter what they did. They were destined to be hit. And there are a number of philosophies, and it's one of those tragedies that apparently the Indianapolis did not have a lot of escort. And as a result of that, there's always finger pointing, but nevertheless, it's one of the things that will always go down in history, and it will be that this is part of war.
We had a young ensign that graduated from the University of Hawaii Naval ROTC School. His grandfather was one of the pilots that spotted him. What would you say to that young ensign whose grandfather actually spotted the guys and at least got some of them saved?
He is part of a living legacy, and that legacy is best preserved, kept, and retold, because I am convinced that a lot of younger individuals do not have the appreciation. And if they did have the appreciation, their whole outlook on life, our mission, our purpose, from cradle to the grave, would be completely different. I'm very pleased to take a few minutes and share something that is near and dear to all of us, and it's a story worth telling. It's a story that needs and should be preserved. I appreciate the work that you do. My job with the American Legion, I am the Director of Fund Development. So I oversee our direct mail, digital, and then our planned giving component, major gifts. And what does that really mean? That means that I am integrally involved in receipt of revenue, generating revenue and contributions that provides training for service officers so that veterans can get their benefits, so that their families are not wanting, which is another legacy that we can't forget.
Do you think our country's education system is doing enough to teach the lessons of Pearl Harbor?
See, I don't. My oldest is 29 years old. I have 3 children. They would not know a whole lot of anything about Pearl Harbor had I not shared with them the perspective and the story that was handed to me that my father lived. And for those who have never served, and our education system, they don't prioritize that. It's the values, and as you articulated a few minutes ago, that's why they call them the greatest generation. And America is today because of the sacrifice that many of those people made. And it's interesting, when I go to Normandy, the people in Normandy treat Americans with great respect. They still tell the story of the liberation of Normandy and then the rest of Europe. If we were to take just a moment and think, what if Hitler had achieved his objectives? What if Japan had achieved theirs? It would not be the world we live in today. And we're so blessed because of the sacrifices that generation made. And unfortunately, I think we're losing sight of it.
Most of the veterans say absolutely it was the right decision to drop the bomb because of the land invasion would have cost millions of lives.
Absolutely.
And you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. It's tragic, it's horrific, but nevertheless, one has to look at the end game. Do we prolong this conflict? One we did not ask for. We voluntarily liberated largely Europe by the American involvement. We didn't ask for Pearl Harbor. We did not ask for the conflict with Japan. And to have an unprovoked attack and to let it continue taking American lives, I don't know that there were any other rational choices.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you all. Yeah. It's been my honor.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.